investigates Thursday at 9 on 4.
Now on 4, children themselves speak out about sexual abuse in Listen to the Children.
10 years ago, child sexual abuse was a closely guarded secret. Afraid and fearing no one would believe them, most of the victims suffered in silence. But over the last decade, thousands of children have broken that taboo. They trusted us to protect them. But they say we've let them down. Showing great courage, some have decided to speak out publicly.
Adults ain't being fair to children. Children ain't getting a fair play.
They say those who harm them are allowed to go free.
I felt really upset when I came out of court. I think that he should have gone to prison because he wasn't telling the truth.
And 10 years after Cleveland, they say we still aren't listening.
The law should be changed so that, people who are being rude to children, the people who do it, they can't come back and do it again.
We have encouraged children to tell about these things. We've said, as adults, we'll believe you. There'll be a process whereby we'll protect you. We'll help you recover from what's happened. And actually, none of those things are true.
Louise, do you want the toilet?
Yes.
Come on then. Louise won't come downstairs on her own. Only have a downstairs toilet, and I've got to keep lifting her. Now she's hitting 9, she's getting quite heavy. She suffers terrible night terrors. She just sleepwalks, bedwets, cries during the night for no apparent reason. There's many a day she sits down, depressed. She doesn't want to know anybody, she doesn't want to talk to anybody. She'll go up and sit in her room and sit crying.
I feel different because everybody are going around dead happy, but I'm the only one that's going around dead sad, and I'm thinking that's happened to me.
Louise's story began in Newcastle in 1993. It was one of the largest child sex abuse investigations in Britain, involving over 100 families. It was also a landmark case, one of the first to test new laws which would allow very young children to be witnesses in court. Louise says she was sexually abused when she was 3 by 2 staff members at this nursery, one of them male.
Louise was in the Red Room class, which was for children of 2 and 3 years of age. She was in that class for about a year. When Louise had already left the nursery, there was allegations of abuse involving other children, but at this time I didn't have any suspicions. She suffered from a lot of cystitis, but I put that down to fizzy pop. I thought because she had sores, it was because I had left her in a wet nappy all day. And looking back on it now, she used to cry because she didn't want to go to the nursery.
Louise says she didn't say anything at the time because the 2 nursery nurses had threatened her.
They were telling us not to tell me mum or dad or anybody. It says keep it a secret. I didn't tell them because it says if you tell them, you'll never see your mum or dad or your family anymore.
It was over a year before Jenny first suspected.
When I picked up the paper and I seen that they had been arrested,
straight away alarm bells were just ringing in my head.
I asked Louise if anybody had ever been silly to her in the nursery, and she then went on to say that the male member of staff had exposed himself to her. She called it his wiggy, and then she went on to say that he had done other things to her.
They says, I'll take you to my house, get you some sweets and get you a drink and bring you straight back to the nursery. All I can remember, it had a red door. I can't remember where it was though.
Louise said that the female member of staff had injected her into her, she called it her Mary. It was then later explained to us that it could have been some form of relaxant. It was just shocking.
They did with things, but I don't like to talk about it. They had a big camera there.
There was photos taken, video cameras used.
They'd used vibrators, but obviously she didn't know what that was.
She described oral sex. She came out and said to me, "Do you put me daddy's willy in your mouth?"
At the age of 4, I couldn't believe what she told me.
I remember walking up to the hospital, and all the way there I was thinking it was just going to be a waste of time. By the look on the doctor's face, I knew then it wasn't a waste of time.
The doctor told me that there had been digital penetration and maybe penetration by a penis, but there was numerous scarring.
It was just like a bombshell, like your worst nightmare.
Until recently, even with strong medical evidence, Louise's case wouldn't have got to court because of her age. Campbell Finlay, who has a British Empire Medal for Child Protection, headed the nursery investigation. New laws had just been introduced, and the police were optimistic about the case.
At the time that this inquiry was ongoing, the law had changed, and there was a general understanding that there was no age bar to children appearing at court. Years ago, judges were very, very reluctant to allow young children, certainly children under 10, into their courts because they were worried that the children didn't understand the oath and the importance of it, the importance of telling the truth. The law changed as far as that was concerned.
The law had also changed the way children gave statements to the police. Campbell Finlay and his staff now had to record each child's interview in a specially equipped suite. If the case got to court, the video recording would be played to spare the child having to go through all the embarrassing details again. And to avoid criticisms of putting words into children's mouths, there were strict new guidelines.
It was recommended that an interview should last an absolute maximum of 1 hour, that there should be no coaching, no preparation of the child for the interview beforehand, and certainly that there should be no leading questions. It would mean, for instance, that the interviewer couldn't mention the name or the names of the suspects.
I'm going to just sit and have a talk for a few minutes, okay?
Yeah.
When Louise done her first video, she didn't really say very much.
That's all right, I don't mind.
She didn't know what she could tell them and what she could be trusted to tell them.
It's a bit embarrassing because, you don't know them, you don't know what they're going to do, you don't know, who they are.
But the police persevered, and on her third interview, Louise said enough to charge the male nursery worker with rape.
Shall I? Is that okay? Right, so today is Friday.
16 other children from the nursery were interviewed on video. Indecent assault charges were brought in relation to 5. They, like Louise, had the verbal skills to describe the abuse. The police were confident.
We thought at that time that there was sufficient legislation in the law books to satisfy the needs of these children. We also thought that there was a realistic prospect of the case succeeding in court. We had a number of very young children who, despite their ages, were all saying something similar to what their peers had said. In some cases, there was a little bit of forensic evidence, and my staff and I believed the children.
The case came to trial in July '94. Anxious parents packed the courtroom.
Extra room had been made in court so that all the parents could actually come into court to hear His Honour hand down the judgment.
Before the jury were sworn in, the judge first had to decide whether to admit the children's videotapes as evidence.
The judge was watching Louise's video because she was the oldest child who had the most serious charges. If her tape was accepted and it went through, the other 5 children's tapes would automatically follow. If hers failed, the other 5 had no chance. And people refer to Louise's case as the test case. Right through history, that's what it's going to be known as, the test case.
But the judge considered Louise too young at the age of 5 to answer all the questions the defence might ask in cross-examination. He concluded,
"At the end of the day, what I have to remember is that I was watching a 4-year-old. She is now only 5, and there is a limit to the contribution that a person of that age could possibly make to a fair criminal trial."
The 2 defendants were declared not guilty.
When the judge pronounced that they were not guilty, the court just totally erupted. Everybody shouted verbal abuse at the judge because the anger was so much. The shock on the judge's face, I've never seen shock like it. Parents went after the van and they were kicking the van and hitting the van and screaming.
There were moves to try and get at the 2 defendants, and we have a duty to try and protect them as well. It was a bad day.
You wouldn't let her go to court?
All right, is that what you wanted to happen? Did you want them to go to jail?
Yeah.
The judge said to me, "Mum, your daughter can't come because she's too small, and I don't think she'll be able to tell the truth." If I was a judge, I would let children have one chance. Then if the judge didn't think that they're telling the truth, they could just not get any more chances.
I was very, very disappointed, both for the parents and for the children. I felt personally that the legal system isn't prepared for 5-year-olds to actually have their evidence heard in court. I don't think the law dealt fairly with the children in that nursery inquiry. I don't feel that at all, although I have to accept what the judgment of the court was. I don't have to agree with it. I have to accept it because I'm a policeman.
At the time of the Newcastle investigation, the legal reforms were still experimental. But 4 years on, the evidence suggests that the system is still failing small children. Since the Home Office had no statistics on prosecution rates, we conducted our own survey. Our findings were alarming. Most police forces said prosecutions were extremely rare if the child was very young. 4 gave precise figures. In South Wales, only 5% of sexual abuse reports by children aged 7 years and under got to court in 1996. Somerset and Devon and Cornwall each had only a single case, a rate of less than 2%. Essex had no cases at all in a 3-month period.
Anecdotally, this is the sort of thing that officers have been saying for some time. But I have to say I was really shocked to see it there in the hard figures in terms of the low level of prosecution. Now, it seems to me if we're saying, well, children under 7 are going to be denied justice routinely, they're not allowed to be victims in our society in the criminal justice sense, then I find that wholly unacceptable.
Even more shocking, our research shows that around 1 in 3 children who report abuse are in this young age group.
This is a third of referrals, and the system seems to be failing children in that group. We're almost saying to an abuser or potential abuser, if you abuse children at a young enough age, you're going to be home free.
If the law's not changed, all children under 7 will be targeted because they know for a fact that they won't be prosecuted for that. And what kind of society is it going to be where all children under 7 have the chance to be abused and nothing can happen?
I still feel upset and angry because, like, I think that, like, it could happen to me again. I feel sad because, like, the way the hurt is, and they didn't get punished.
Would you like to take a seat over there?
But it's not just children under 7 that the system is failing. Over the last 10 years, the prosecution rate for all child sex abuse cases has steadily declined.
Just to let you know, there are a couple of cameras in the room. There's one up there.
And it's the most radical reform, the videotaped interview, that's proving one of the biggest hurdles. Police and social workers have found that the guidelines are unsuited to the needs of the most vulnerable children.
Can you tell me what happened next? Did anything happen next? Will you be able to tell me?
Many are unable to tell their harrowing stories to virtual strangers in the time recommended.
They meet them cold in that room, and in the space of an hour they have to extract as much possibly painful information from that child as is humanly possible.
Yeah.
Some children just cannot make a video for a number of reasons. They may be frightened, they may be embarrassed, they may even be under threat not to tell. And here's a nice police lady and a social worker trying to ask them details of some very intimate matters which they might be too frightened to talk about. Some children don't have the language. They just cannot sit in front of a camera.
Children, the most disadvantaged, the most vulnerable, and probably the most traumatised children, are failing to disclose information to investigators because of the time constraints and the approach to questioning that officers are obliged to take.
Despite 10 years of legal reform, our criminal justice system is still failing children. Only the strongest make it to court. That's because giving evidence at trial can be extremely traumatic, as Emma was to discover.
I was not looking forward to go to court. It was worse than I thought it would be.
I didn't spend as much as I expected on my car insurance with the AA. But that doesn't mean to say he's getting what's left. AA car insurance costs less than I thought.
Call direct on 0800 444 777.
You said left.
Well, I meant right.
Well, why don't you say right then?
Just take the right.
So where's the restaurant?
I'm trying to get us there.
Have you got that thing the right way up?
Yes, I have. There's a shortcut.
Shortcut. Brilliant.
Really, I'm sorry about this.
This is the last time we're ever booking anywhere.
Why don't we eat round here somewhere?
Here.
How about over there? Rutherford, 9:30, table for 2.
Spirito di punto.
Every day, more and more people are turning to Tipperary, the natural mineral water, the natural choice.
It's gorgeous.
Oh, I can't wait to be found.
Welcome to Killjoy Health Farm.
What are you doing? Just checking for calories, ladies. And hold on, Lolo, it's low in fat.
And low in cholesterol.
We supply the low-fat cuisine here.
But it tastes really good.
Ladies, we are not here to enjoy ourselves.
Lolo, so good it tastes like it shouldn't.
Kelly Hamlin. Whatever you are looking for, Andalusia has at least twice as much. Come to Andalusia. Andalusia, there's only one.
Where is it written that you should slave into your 60s? I'm Peter Davis, Head of Prudential, and we can help you work out a plan for an earlier retirement. You'll want security and good returns, so the sooner we start, the better. Last year, Prudential paid out nearly £500 million in pensions. So with a little planning, being beached at 55 can be quite rewarding, in more ways than one.
Peter Davis, the man from the Pru.
In February last year, the man Lisa and Emma accused of sexually assaulting them was found not guilty in court.
I feel really, really angry because he wasn't telling the truth and me and Lisa was.
I'm taking part in this television programme because I want adults to know that children should get their own fair share of what adults get. I hope justice will come for children.
2 summers ago, Lisa and Emma spent most days in the local park. When they were thirsty, they'd visit the warden's office.
We used to find a bottle and then go and ask if he would fill it up with water with the tap around the back of his office. He was the local park keeper. I didn't think he could do any harm.
The abuse began when Emma, then aged 7, was on her own with the new part-time warden, a man in his 50s.
One day, he took us into his office. He locked the door and he pushed me into the toilet. And then he told me to take my trousers down. And I was scared that he wasn't going to let me out, so I pulled my pants down and did what he said. He said that if I told just anybody about this, I'd go into a foster home and I won't see my mum and dad again.
But Emma did tell her best friend Lisa. When the park keeper found out, he included her in the assaults. He used the same tactics to silence the 10-year-old.
He would threaten us, like say we would go to a children's home and he said he'd lose his family and go to jail, and he was trying to make out that we'd be guilty if we told someone.
The girls say they were indecently assaulted many times over the next 4 months, on several occasions in the ladies' toilets.
As you go in, when you turn in now, there's this little storeroom.
Well, down the end there's this chair, and he told us to stand on it. He used to say, I want to get you excited tonight. And I didn't quite understand what he meant by that.
The abuse became increasingly more serious. On one occasion, the park keeper drove the children to the outskirts of town.
In the car, so I was quite frightened because I thought that he was gonna dump us somewhere. I saw a bag in front of the car and I thought he had a knife in the bag and I thought he was going to kill us. And I was so scared, I was shaking.
The warden drove the children to a local beauty spot.
We got a car and then he took us into the woods. Went over the stile. And there's this little path you walk along. I walked along the path past the river and I thought he was going to kill us and throw us in the river.
We had to walk up this little tiny hill. He took us to these big cliffs.
He told us to take our trousers and our pants down. And then after we did what he had to, he gave us £2. He would give us money, round about £1.50 or £1 or £2, after he'd do something to us.
For 4 months, the abuse went undiscovered. The park keeper was careful.
When me and Lisa were in there, he took the battery out the bell and he wrote a letter on the window saying, "Not here, gone to check the tennis court."
It was only when a third girl was approached that the secret came out.
He whispered to me, go and ask her if I could see her underwear. I won't hurt her or nothing. And she goes, "No, I've got to tell my dad, and my dad's going to tell your dad."
If I would have got my hands on him, I would have killed him. You would like him to be put away for life, not 10 years, 20, for life.
Do you want to sit on that one there?
Although frightened, both girls gave very detailed statements on video. The police were confident they'd make excellent witnesses.
Start all over again. The police ladies and the policemen are nice. They're all nice to you. As long as you tell the truth and you be honest.
I think the quality of the children's evidence was very good. Certainly the video interviews that they gave to us at the time were very detailed. The validation that surrounded the allegations was good. And when it was reviewed by the prosecuting barrister, he said that the quality was excellent and that it would give us a realistic prospect of conviction.
The warden was charged with indecent assault. He pleaded not guilty, so the case went to trial. Since 1992, there have been major changes in the courtroom to make testifying less frightening for children.
This is what I look like with the wig off. Which do you prefer?
Children can give evidence from a separate room by video link, and to spare them describing the abuse all over again, their police video is shown to the jury.
Now you'll see two other.
But the reforms haven't affected the most frightening part. Children still have to be cross-examined.
Answer some questions.
That's right.
When Emma went to court in February last year, she found the line of questioning much more hostile than she expected.
I was not looking forward to go to court because I thought it was going to be horrible, and it was. It was worse than I thought it was going to be. Every time I answered a question, they were saying I was lying, I wasn't telling them the truth. I felt really, really, really upset. Of course, the examiner made me cry. I wanted my mum because every time I cry, I want my mum anyway. He asked me questions I didn't really understand, and ones I didn't like, and ones that were embarrassing to say. He kept calling me a liar. Well, it's worse than I thought. Well, that's horrible.
Lynette, it would be wrong to tell lies about your uncle. Do you agree?
A recent survey of child witnesses revealed most found cross-examination frightening.
Very much, does she?
But judges say that tough questions have to be put, irrespective of age.
No, there is no nice way of saying to someone, in effect, you're lying. It has to be suggested to her that she's not telling the truth. It's very distressing. There's no avoiding that. And I'm afraid that any idea that you can is cloud cuckoo land.
Both Lisa and Emma were so distressed after testifying that they needed counselling. But their ordeal was not yet over. After 5 days of evidence came the bombshell. 2 jury members admitted knowing the defendant's family, and a retrial was ordered.
I don't really want to go back there because the judge and the defence lawyer weren't nice to me.
He said, this is the only way that this man can be punished. And I said, as long as you tell the truth, then you have no worries. Unfortunately, telling the truth doesn't seem to pay off.
Lisa's second cross-examination was even more distressing than the first. This time, the defence suggested she was an habitual liar. Things began to go badly when she admitted making up stories to get money from people in the park.
Tell us what kind of lies you used to tell these people.
I can't remember.
Just think of one of the lies you used to tell.
All I could think of I needed 10p to ring my mum up.
You knew full well about borrowing the money for telephoning to ring home, did you not? So that was another lie to me, was it not? Why are you lying to me?
I'm not trying to lie. I'm trying to think.
Lisa was so distressed by continuous suggestions of lying that she needed 2 breaks to compose herself.
The second time I came out crying because I don't really want to go back in again.
Now, when you put to any witness, let alone to a child, that they're telling lies, accuse them of telling lies, that winds them up, that distresses them, and makes them confused, and that then means that they aren't functioning well when it comes to the other type of question designed to extract extra information.
Lisa was so confused that she was unable to remember many of the details that she'd given on video. As a result, she came across as a child making up a story.
Yeah, I do make stories up. Like, usually if I come home late, I have to make up a story of where I've been. I thought he meant something like that. But as I found out, he was trying to trick me by saying yes, that I make up stories of what happened.
What were you doing?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Have you forgotten the story?
What story?
This is a story, is it not?
What is?
What you are telling us about the woods.
No.
Tell us what happened then, please.
I think I was rolling in a condom and putting it on his penis.
You think you were rolling a condom and putting it on his penis. Have you just made that up as a guess, you said?
It is a guess.
Do not please guess, because that does not help me and it does not help anyone else. Do you understand that? Now, tell us what happened at the woods.
I can't remember.
You have not got any idea at all, have you?
I don't feel that my daughter had a fair trial. You have to understand that this man was able to bully and manipulate my daughter into getting her to say anything. Now, you have a 10-year-old which is giving evidence with a grown man who was firing questions at her. I can't see no difference from an armed robber being questioned to a child.
It just seemed like the lawyer was a little tiny mouse and the defense lawyer was the big cat. I mean, the mouse was hiding away. He just stayed in his seat and drinking his water. I mean, he never, backed me up or something.
After Lisa was cross-examined for over 2 hours, the judge indicated in private that the jury might have trouble convicting. To limit the psychological harm to Lisa and to spare Emma a similar ordeal, the prosecution reluctantly withdrew the case.
It was to avoid the distress to the second child, and I think ultimately we have to ask ourselves the question, what does that say about the system when we're saying that children are distressed by cross-examination?
We've reached a point where the system is actually incapable of enabling a child to repeat the allegations and be questioned. And I accept the need for questioning. Children do make stories up, children do tell lies, they're the same as any other human being. But we need a system that will enable somehow that child to be questioned appropriately, for the evidence to be tested in a proper way, to enable a jury to come to a conclusion about the truth or otherwise of what the child is saying.
Lisa was later diagnosed as having post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition she didn't suffer from before the trial.
They've had an abuse to them before they go to court, and it seems they suffer a second abuse while they're in the court. This must be stopped.
But in a criminal trial, the child's interests and the interests of the accused are incompatible. And currently, the legal establishment insists the balance must stay in favor of the defendant. The child's needs are secondary.
It's a legal system, but it's not a justice system. Certainly children's interests are not served by a gladiatorial contest between lawyers in court, which is not about truth-seeking.
The big question, the question of principle, is if you're asking me what's paramount in a criminal court, the answer is very clear. The interests of the defendant. Because push comes to shove and things go wrong from the point of view of the child will go home. Push comes to shove and things go wrong from the point of view of the defendant, it may be 8 years.
In this case, the defendant lost his job, but not his liberty. The children lost much more.
He wants to see how my daughter is, to know what ruining somebody's life is all about. My daughter is not the same little girl I had before all this happened. I'm very angry, and it's hurt more than you'll ever know to sit here today.
I always check my window, see if it's open, because if I leave it open at night, I just think that somebody's going to get in. I always bolt the door at night, and I always just check in my cupboard, see if anybody's in there, because I'm so scared that he could be in there trying to find me again. Well, it lasts a very long time in your life, and probably some people, which I think it will happen to me, stay in your life forever, and it won't come out.
It's something that never goes away. You feel so sorry for her, and you want to hug her every day and hope that one day that the pain will go away.
Most cases don't get to court. Many are dropped because police and the Crown Prosecution Service think the child couldn't cope with cross-examination. But few prosecutions mean even fewer convictions. The implications of that are grave.
He shouldn't have got off free, because what he did, he could do it to somebody else.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. 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 Yes.
Call me slow, but it took me 3 years of insuring my car with the AA before I thought, if this deal's so good, I'll get them to insure my home too. And I have. AA home insurance costs less than I thought.
Call direct on 0800 444 777.
BT1, BT2, BT45, BT46. Now, wherever you live in Northern Ireland, you can enjoy the extra freedom and benefits of digital phone services, provided that is you're a customer of BT. BT's range of select services brings you extra convenience and choice when using the phone. Call waiting lets you know when another caller is trying to get through. Call Minder takes messages for you. Caller display lets you know who's calling before you answer. Call return gives you the number of your last caller. And when you phone and get an engaged tone, ring back when free will automatically phone that number for you when it's free. To find out about all of BT's select services, free phone 0800 318 926 now. BT is the only phone company to provide direct digital phone services anywhere in Northern Ireland. So whatever BT area you live in, you're now even better off with BT.
No! No! No, 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 no. No! 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 No. No.
Over the last 10 years, an increasing number of children have reported sexual abuse to the police. Parents, meanwhile, have lost confidence in the law, and the reason is understandable.
You've carried that child, you've given birth to that child, and someone just can walk in and can take his innocence and get away with it. But he's took his innocence away, and you'll never get that back.
Jill was devastated when the man who abused her 4-year-old son wasn't prosecuted. She was even more irate when she discovered he was a known paedophile.
Disbelief. Total disbelief.
Jill's son, Simon, is played here by an actor. Like other parents, she thought her son was safe.
I'd always taught him about strangers. You don't talk to people that you don't know. If somebody calls you to a car, you don't go over. But Keith wasn't a stranger. He was a daddy. And I never, ever thought that, he was a paedophile.
Simon's abuser was the former husband of a neighbour. Ironically, Jill, a single parent, was pleased when he formed a special friendship with her little boy. Simon missed his father, a vulnerability Keith was quick to exploit.
He loves cars and things, and for Keith to actually let him, mess about inside the car with a gear stick was, brilliant as far as he was concerned. Boys' things. He used to do boys' things.
Research shows that the majority of child abusers use threats to silence their victims. Simon's abuser said he'd take him away from his mummy if he ever told. So it was a concerned neighbour who first alerted Jill.
She had overheard Keith say to Simon, "I can't touch you today in case somebody sees." And I said, "No."
At first, Simon was too afraid to tell. But after reassurance, a horrifying story emerged.
He first said, "Keith plays with my Willie." And he said that Keith had told him to suck it like spaghetti. And that was just totally devastating.
Simon also told his mother that Keith would take him into his former wife's house when she was out. He said Keith had put cream around his bottom on several occasions and inserted his fingers.
He was planning rape, basically. Keith had touched him in places where I'd never touched him, and I made him. It's just total disgust and anger.
At his video interview, Simon was much too frightened to speak. Keith's threats had done the trick.
And he said, "I'm sorry. I was scared."
But Jill reassured Simon that the law would protect him if he told, and his abuser would be taken away.
"Is he going to jail, Mummy?" And I said, "Well, yes. He is going to go to jail because he's been bad."
So at the second video interview, Simon was extremely brave and told the police everything.
I automatically presumed, yes, he's done it, we're going to get a conviction, and was overjoyed. And the police looked at me as if I was from another planet, basically.
Keith had 2 previous convictions for abusing children and had served a 3-year prison sentence. But because he denied assaulting Simon, he wasn't even charged. The police said, due to Simon's age, the prospect of a conviction was remote.
He said, well, to be honest, we would, if he was 8 or 9, we could have been in with a better chance. So I said, well, I'll just let this guy abuse him for another 5 years and then we'll come back to you, shall we?
But Jill refused to give up. She was told there was insufficient evidence, so she and a friend decided to conduct their own investigation.
I was in no doubt that Simon was not the only child, that there had been others.
They trailed Keith's car day and night. The plan was to find out where he went and what people knew about him. Soon they made a shocking discovery. 4 years previously, Keith had abused another little boy in very similar circumstances.
It was a carbon copy of the crime he had previously been convicted of.
But this wasn't new evidence. Like Simon, that child had made a statement, and Keith wasn't prosecuted for the very same reason.
He not only was, he is. He's still at large. I'm very, very concerned that he is going to reoffend towards other young children.
Jill has reason to be concerned. Dr. Kevin Brown's study of about 100 paedophiles reveals an alarming number of victims. A quarter had abused up to 40 children, and 1 in 15 up to 400 victims.
Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a one-off offender because of the addictive quality of paedophilia and the fantasies they have about children. Once someone is finding a child sexually stimulating and attractive, then that particular fantasy gets worse with time and their activities get worse over time. And it's very, very rare to have someone sexually assault a child and never do it again.
I'd be 57 when I was caught. So you're talking about 40 years. A period of 40 years during which this abuse of children had gone on.
Andy got away with it for 40 years. His tactics were typical.
I would target a particular boy and then make it my job to become friends with him, to become trusted. I would know him for a while before I offended, before I touched him indecently. And during this period, I would get to know the family, and I think people just got used to seeing me around and were quite happy for their boy to spend time with me.
Andy targeted vulnerable boys. He used affection and gifts to earn their friendship and then exploited their feelings of guilt so they wouldn't tell. But finally, one did, and Andy confessed to the police. He's particularly remorseful about one boy.
The person for whom I had the most affection out of these cases that I was arrested for, his father used to knock him about. I once saw that boy in tears because his father had hit him. And he begged me not to tell his mum. He says, don't tell my mum because she'll leave home if I do. And he was that little boy who needed help. He needed someone to help him. What he got was me.
Andy went to prison. Most abusers aren't even convicted. And if the abuse is in the family, they're seldom prosecuted. Social services believe it can hurt the child more if the families split apart. Instead, care and supervision orders are used to protect the child. While well-intentioned, this may be short-sighted. Research shows when parents can't abuse their own children, many find victims outside the family.
These are true paedophiles, and if one takes the child into care, then the parent in one in three cases is free to go on and abuse others. So I think that we do need to regard incestuous families and incestuous relationships with children as extremely serious and the criminal offence, which it is.
But there's another reason why a higher rate of convictions is vital. These sex offenders are attending a treatment program. It's run by probation officers, but they're not doing it out of sympathy for the abusers.
What I'm interested in is practical ways that people can learn to control their behaviour. And the reason that we're doing that is because we want to prevent future victims. 12 to 16.
Most abusers deny that what they do is harmful. The aim here is to change their attitudes so that they can learn to control their behaviour.
All the time I was offending, I never thought I was hurting my daughter at all. I kidded myself that she was fast asleep. Now, after all of this, I found that she was too terrified to move.
Do you think you're still at risk of offending?
Yes, I do. But I can say that now. And because I know it, I believe I can control it. There is a part of me that will always want to offend. And I keep an eye on that part of me, studiously.
Whilst in prison, Andy attended a similar treatment program.
I'm glad I was convicted. That prevented any more victims. Children's lives have been destroyed through this. If the time I spent in prison is helped to save one victim, that's worthwhile.
Until recently, therapy was thought to be ineffective, but research indicates that those who've had treatment are less likely to reoffend. But there's a catch. Treatment's only available to convicted offenders, and currently that's only a small minority of abusers.
If we're serious about getting hold of the offenders and having some element of deterrent and protecting other children in the future, then the criminal law has a very important part to play in that process.
And while the vast majority of abusers remain unprosecuted, parents grow increasingly angry and frustrated.
I couldn't tell you the amount of people that offered to totally blow him away. And I thought, no, this is not the way.
For Jill and her friends, the only way is to campaign for a radical change in the law.
Were you aware that the law doesn't protect our children from paedophiles in our community?
But they face an uphill struggle on behalf of their children. After a decade of reform, the legal establishment is opposed to changes that might alter the balance in the present system.
In our system, we still work on the principle that it's better to make sure that an innocent man isn't wrongly convicted than to make sure that a guilty man is. So we accept in our system that guilty men are not convicted, they're not prosecuted. And that's the price we pay. Now, if we change that price, that's a matter for the community as a whole. It's not for the judges to say.
But as these mothers have discovered, child sex abuse is still a subject that most people would rather not think about.
I'm surprised how many people who don't sign it. I think once they hear the word paedophile, they run a mile.
It will take political will to decide that we are going to face these questions and that we're not going to avoid them because they're difficult for us. Because they may be difficult for us, but they're much more difficult for the children who these things happen to. They're the ones who've been betrayed. We have encouraged children to tell about these things. We've said, as adults, we'll believe you, There'll be a process whereby we'll protect you. We'll help you recover from what's happened. And actually none of those things are true.
10 years ago in Cleveland, social workers were blamed for exaggerating the problem. We now know that more children are sexually abused than we ever imagined. If nothing changes, thousands more will become victims. And for each child, the cost is immeasurable: the loss of innocence and the death of childhood.